Well, hello and welcome to a very special live webathon edition of the Reason Roundtable. Normally, this is where I say that the Roundtable is your libertarian review of news and culture from the editors of Reason magazine. But today, it's that and something more. It is an opportunity to ask the Roundtable any damn question you want. Policy, politics, what it's like to work at Reason, or with Nick Gillespie, who is not here, but we got Robby Soave instead. Science fiction novels. We already have a couple of questions about Dungeons and Dragons teed up, and we will try to answer as many of them as we can. I'm your host, Peter Suderman, and today I am joined by my colleagues, Katherine Mangu-Ward, Matt Welch, and the great Robby Soave. Okay, so we have a lot of questions already. People have sent their questions, and so many of you put Webathon in the subject line like you were instructed. Thank you so much. But you can still ask us your questions today in the chat. Just put them in the chat. And if you want to donate to support the pod and everything we do at Reason, which you should, you can give right here on YouTube with the donate button. Otherwise, check the link in the podcast episode description, Facebook, X comments, or go directly to reason.com/donate. So we are going to start here with a question for the entire gang. This is a question from Ryan, who is a donor already. He donated, so he gets the first question. This question is, libertarians specifically, and Americans more generally, have earned a reputation for favoring the chaotic and the disorderly, possibly like this podcast. Yet when I travel, I gravitate to countries like Japan or Switzerland with incredibly orderly societies. So in what contexts should libertarians make a stronger case for more structure in American life, perhaps even with some administrative oversight that would appease the normies who find our anarchic tendencies unserious, but wouldn't inevitably lead to dystopian outcomes? For Robby, if the D&D players on this podcast, this is coming from the questioner, not from me, if the D&D players on this podcast want to just use this as an opportunity to digress on country alignments, that wouldn't be upsetting to me. All right, so in fact, let's do the D&D part of this. First, Robby, order versus chaos, America versus Japan.
Just a little easy question to kick us off.
It's kind of hard. I mean, I actually don't quite grasp the D&D part of it. Country a lot.
Like the U.S. is chaotic neutral.
Oh, see, we don't really use character alignment very much.
I do in my heart.
In the D&D stuff that we do, I don't think so. That threw me a bit. Yeah, we're libertarians are not lawful, chaotic. Anywhere really on that spectrum. I don't think it matches ideology very well, frankly, in the first place. I understand why people seek greater order, I think, than maybe some libertarians are willing to give them credit for. I would say that there's such a thing as ordered liberty, right? We don't need to be on the side of chaos for chaos' sake. We just don't think the government is necessarily the best vehicle for achieving ordered liberty, right? That's a component of our philosophy. Someone else talk. I'm butchering this answer.
Okay, I'm here for you, Robby. I got you, baby.
Anarchy.
Here's the situation. The U.S. is chaotic neutral, and that is the best way to be. It is also basically how I play all of my characters in D&D, and you should too. That is because people underestimate the generative power of chaos. You got to have chaos to get good new stuff, and that's just how it is. Japan has toggled between lawful good and lawful evil, and that's the problem with being lawful, is lawful neutral isn't really a thing. So we got our World War II era Japan, lawful evil. Current Japan, probably lawful good. They seem to be doing fine, but I think I like my order in small pockets and not.
Matt, you can ignore the Dungeons and Dragons part of this unless you want to talk about your Lord of the Rings days. But like, you've spent a lot of time abroad, and it's different in other countries. You want to talk about that in the context of this question?
Yeah. Have you ever tried to drive in Italy? Don't come to me about America being like chaotic.
That's just a personal
homeland.
Attack on Robby.
Well,
and it's
I mean,
rude.
just because Gillespie's not here, I got to go after somebody.
You know, Matt, I talked to Michael Moynihan yesterday on his show for Two Way, and he didn't know I was Italian, and I didn't know he was Italian, and we had this moment. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. I assumed he was like a Nordic person, and I guess he assumed I was too.
I think you don't quite match up with his committed alcoholism, but there's still time for you yet. Maybe I'm not. I haven't been to DC in a while, and I should have been here today, but that's a different story. First of all, Suderman, how dare you imply that I wasn't a dungeon master in 1978, because I was.
Back when the game was mostly math.
No, it's math and like graph paper. I was all over that. Are you kidding? I kind of reject the premise. I don't think that libertarianism means that you like chaos necessarily. There's a lot of different places with a lot of different ideas. Whenever I'm in Switzerland, I cross the street against a red light because those people are uptight and they need to have someone be a little bit more American on them. And whenever I'm in southern Italy, I try to leave it. Because it's too crazy. So like, it just sort of depends on what you want to do. The question is, what do you do with government policy? I think a lot of libertarians like me are attracted to cities. I think that sometimes libertarians lose the plot about public order, which is it's a version of chaos that I don't necessarily like. And I think if you're enforcing property rights, then you don't necessarily say, hey, it's cool for the homeless guy to poop on my sidewalk in front of my house. I don't think it's all that hard to get at, and it doesn't necessarily flow from actually applied libertarianism that you should enjoy that. So I mean, it's everyone can do what they want to do. If you like Japan, dude, I'm not going to kink shame, but I might appreciate a place that has a little bit more rule breaking.
This, as our first question, has been a real choice that we made. And
hey, look, when somebody donates, they get their question put to the top of the queue. I just want everyone to understand that.
What's wrong is with us, and more importantly, the fact that I would be the defender of chaos on this podcast with you three chaos Muppets is the silliest thing imaginable. Yes. Let's have another question.
Speaking of nerdy things, nerdy games, I do see that at least one of our live show watchers on YouTube is apparently playing Fallout 3 while listening. One of the best games ever.
Yes.
Very libertarian, actually. So, all right, we're on the topic of other countries. I want to direct a question towards Matt. Why don't you want America to support Ukraine, and what would it take for you to advocate support for a foreign ally? I would love for Europe to sack up and defend itself, but if they don't, should America also sit out the next larger round of conflicts? Would America somehow be better off? That's from Scott, who is also a donor. And okay, I'm not sure that actually matches your personal outlook on Ukraine, Matt, but take this as an opportunity to talk about sort of America vis-a-vis the war in Ukraine, right? You have, I think, more experience in Europe than any of us.
Let's talk about Matt a little bit more on this Reason Webathon podcast. No,
Everybody likes you.
I support the U.S. I would like to advocate that the U.S. government help Ukraine fight a defensive war against an evil aggressor. I think that's fine. But I also think that it's asinine to want or to expect the United States to play the lead role in defending a European country from a European aggressor. And I think the self-evidence of that asininity that's right, Catherine, is frustrating. And it's a sign that we made a big mistake back in 1991 with not actually treating the Cold War as a war to be settled. We've never really quite settled it, which is one of the reasons why you have sort of hungover Atlanticist ideas that the U.S. has to play a major character role in every single security arrangement in Europe. I don't think that the United States should. And I also think that if people like me want the U.S. to help Ukraine, you've got to make that argument to fellow Americans and in your legislatures and convince them. I can make them argument and reason. I will lose. I'm fine with that. I expect it. But American foreign policy should be tethered to American values and public opinion and not just sort of tossed willy-nilly around. The real disgrace right here, it happens not with America, as much as I disagree with Donald Trump about Ukraine on any given day, depending on where he's at, but with Europe. Western Europe has known now for 11 years that Donald Trump is not interested in the post-World War II Atlantic era of the U.S. being everywhere. And so it has had time to refigure it out, and they still haven't. This week, they're treating it all like it's brand new news. Oh, my God, we're going to have to do something about Ukraine. Well, you should have started a while ago.
All right, let's keep the game nerdery going. With a question for Robby here. This comes from the Free Media comments section. So Robby is the host of Free Media on Reason. It's a great show. You should watch it. So this question is, Robby mentioned in an intro on Rising that he was finishing Donkey Kong Bonanza, which looks amazing based on what I've seen. I'm curious about his favorite video game genres, favorite games, or at least the types and titles he goes to in his free time. Also, any games are you looking forward to? Let's keep this name one. What is the one game that is most representative of your tastes, Robby?
The question was perfectly easy, and then you threw something at me that is more difficult to answer that I can't think of right off the bat. My brain is finally working. Donkey Kong Bonanza was terrific. I'm in general a fan of the Nintendo genre. I am pegged as a gamer, but I'm not actually. I don't play a wide variety of video games. I'm basically just a Nintendo guy who plays the main Zelda, Mario, Donkey Kong titles. I'm interested in getting the new Pokemon game, Pokemon Legends. I may get that at some point. Right now I'm playing a Zelda, not a main timeline Zelda game, Zelda, the new Hyrule Warrior style game. It's a hack and slash Zelda prequel game that is really fun if you like those Koei, Tecmo, Dynasty Warrior type games. I think they're great. It's okay. It's like just button mashing and fun. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm looking forward to a new main title Mario and Zelda game in the future, although they probably won't be announced for years. And I am excited, however, for the next Mario movie, the trailer of which was really, really good. They're going to introduce Rosalina and Baby Bowser, who are terrific characters. So I'm excited for that.
As the other gamer on this pod, I will also answer here Western-style RPGs like the ones from Bethesda, Fallout 3 included, as well as Obsidian. I've been playing Outer Worlds 2. It's great, kind of a satire of capitalism that goes so far that it actually ends up not satirizing capitalism. It's just satirizing government because the corporations are just all-powerful governments. All right, next question is for Katherine, and it's not about video games at all. Katherine, why don't you vote? I guess it is about a kind of game, right? Voting is a game, maybe, in your mind. Sure, it won't change anything, but it barely costs anything to do so. Would you vote for Justin Amash or Thomas Massie if they were on the ballot? This question is from Amin, who, I should note, is a donor. He gave us money, which you can do.
Super cool. Before I answer this question, can I tell people about the swag they would get if they donated, Peter?
You should do that.
Thank you so much.
Tell us.
So if you donated today or anytime during our webathon, you would get some cool swag. The first thing you would get would allow you to read Suderman's brief review of Outer Worlds 17 or whatever it was, which is in the next print issue of the magazine. You get a 1-year subscription to Reason Plus that gets you like no ads on the website, access to the digital version of the magazine early, and a bunch of other cool stuff. At $100, you get that and a camper mug, which is one of those metal ones, which I think are pretty cool. At $500, you get Jacob Sullum's new book, Beyond all the stuff above, and Jacob Sullum's new book, Beyond Control. At $1,000, you get all the stuff above, and you get invited to come to Reason Weekend, which is where we hang out with our donors and have a good time in a cool city. And you get a pin and a shout out on this here podcast. At $5,000, you get all the stuff above. Plus, you can have lunch with one of the Reason editors in DC or New York. And at $10,000, you get all the stuff above and a ticket to Reason Weekend for first timers. So it's pretty good stuff. You should consider getting some swag if you want. Okay, so my question is, why don't I vote? And I, of course, commend you to the many times I've written about this in Reason, because I can, but I'm always happy to answer this question because it's. I think your phrasing is perfect, which is like, it hardly costs anything. Yes, but it does cost something. And so the question is, how do I use my time? How do I use my energy? Especially on election day. I'm kind of busy on election day. So for me personally, that is actually a high opportunity cost to go stand in line. I know now we can vote by mail or whatever, but the main reason I don't vote is because I will not influence the outcome of an election. But I also don't vote because I do not want to be complicit in the bad things that the people who get elected do. And I feel this more and more as time goes on. This was kind of an incidental argument to me early on, the kind of clean hands argument. But as I gaze upon the horrors of what is happening here in my city, both at the federal and local level, I feel glad that I never said out loud in a sort of important public way, I think that these guys might be able to do this job, because it turns out they can't. I might vote for Justin Amash if he ran for something, because it might give me personally I might get a warm fuzzy about that, but like, honestly, probably not even him. Sorry, Justin.
Also, he'd be a pretty good source. All right, next question is for Robby, and it's about libertarians. We actually get a lot of questions just sort of about like, what is this whole libertarianism thing? Like maybe even from libertarians who like don't understand the world that they are living in right now. And this is a good question. It comes from Rob. Why are libertarians so fundamentally misunderstood? I hear the name used as a slur for conspiracy theorists and Republicans who like weed. How and when did we, so this comes from a libertarian, how and when did we get such a bad reputation? Our beliefs feel balanced and rational, yet we are dismissed. Robby, what do you say?
Oh, I don't think this has gotten worse over time. I think we have never reached a point in the culture or in political discussion or in the news media where we are described accurately or well known to a vast majority of people. What was it just earlier this week? I saw Matt's friend Camille Foster, a friend to all of us, but does the Fifth Column podcast with him, described on social media as even leftist Camille Foster. Like, that's a new one. We have never lived in a world where our views were well known and well described, and it's like it's gotten worse over the time. It's just never been that way. While our views seem very consistent, they are consistent. That's consistency is what motivates a lot of people to become libertarians. I've found is, philosophically, I think the government should have done less in these circumstances, and I am now making my views consistent by bringing the other half of my views in line with that. That's how a lot of us came to libertarianism, whether it was from conservatism or from liberalism. I have found that ideological consistency, while very appealing to me, and I know very appealing to Katherine, Matt, Peter, and most of the people who work at Reason, just does not motivate a vast majority of people. And so they just doesn't occur to them that, I have wildly conflicting views on the role of government on this issue versus this issue. And it doesn't bother them. And for that reason, I think our views are not as well understood as it's so obvious and intuitive to us. It is not that way for other people, or especially for people in the media who cover politics.
So as it happens, we have a bunch of questions about being a libertarian and what that means coming in through the live chat. There's a lot of you out there. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm just going to throw one to Matt Welch here. How do you think we separate ourselves from the MAGA crowd, racists, other undesirables, while not losing numbers? I mean, I think the argument here is there are a lot of people who are MAGA, who are kind of pro-Trump, and that crowd is, I think, unfortunately, sort of at least nudging up against some pretty unsavory elements on the right. So how do libertarians separate themselves while also maintaining a big political presence?
I guess my answer begins with the question, though the terms we and ourselves is everything on some level. As Robby was saying, there's a lot of us who are attracted to this by a set of ideas more than, and that is privileged over the set of how do we maximize our numbers in order to affect outcomes in government, and especially outcomes in politics, which is how most electoral politics, which is how most people kind of translate this. And I just don't think necessarily that you're going to vote your way out of anything. Not to go full Katherine here, because I always
go full Katherine.
Always send her pictures or tag her pictures of me on election day with the I voted sticker to try to torture her at least a little bit. So my project is not to try to maximize the number of human beings or to not alienate potential allies by not saying or thinking something that I believe is true. If I believe that someone is racist, and my bar for that is actually pretty high to make that accusation for people, because how do we look in someone's human heart? But there are a lot of people who are announcing themselves these days more and more, certainly on the organized right in Washington, D.C. and other places. You see more of that. I don't have any problem saying I don't give a flying fig if you are anywhere near me. My beliefs are based on not the maximum of numbers, but what the ideas are. That's it. And if you want to join me for one issue, great, fine. But like, I'm not worried about playing nice footsie with you otherwise. It's about ideas, not offending people.
So we've got a couple of questions about the relationship between libertarians and anarchists. So I'm going to ask those to Katherine, our resident anarchist here. I'm just going to read both of these. One is from Robert O'Reilly, who writes, what principles do you use to delineate a libertarian from an anarchist who thinks they are a libertarian? And why is that an important distinction for libertarians? And then Whitecat76 asks, how can a libertarian that believes in the Constitution, remember that whole important document. How can a libertarian who believes in the Constitution be an anarchist? Catherine, you're an anarchist.
I'm here for you. And Nick Gillespie is not
I
here
know.
because he's on paternity leave. So, haha, the anarchists win again by not reproducing this week. Anyway, so
congratulations to Nick Gillespie. Nice.
My answer is, first of all, I don't think libertarians who don't think anarchists are part of the coalition need to worry about us too much. There's like 6 of us in the anarcho-capitalist sub category. No one
and
cares.
4 of them are your secret clones.
Yeah, 4 of them are just KMW bots 2 through So so don't worry about it. Like, just you got so many other people who don't agree with you to fight. You don't need to be fighting me. But also Nick and I have debated this many times, including in Reason's pages, and we are together on the road of reform for 97% of the way. And if you would like to pull off at the minarchist exit and leave me to proceed on my way to full anarchism, okay, that's fine. In the meantime, we can agree to abolish Social Security together. And seeing as that's probably never going to happen, we'll never get to the point where we have to diverge. Now, obviously, sometimes your vision of where you're headed determines the path.
We're barely going to get a half decent technocratic reform of
I'm
Social
still hoping
Security.
for those black box accounts, from back in the day. So it's, we do not need to deal with the question of anarchism in that context.
Full hour on the Paul Ryan plan here.
Yeah. But for the constitutional question, I would say maybe we should chat with our boy Lysander Spooner. Maybe we should there is an anarchist constitutionalist tradition. Randy Barnett has historically been a part of this. And again, I think so much of this just has to do with if your instincts are about protecting human liberty and about kind of maximizing choice, the U.S. Constitution is the most world historically important document in getting us closer to that world, and we'll worry about the rest later.
Robby, you are our resident scooter enthusiast, so this one's going to go to you. Also about being a libertarian. What if I like small government, but I also think seatbelt and bike helmet laws are fine?
I mean, that's fine. I'm not going to run you out of the coalition. Like Catherine was saying, I'm just in favor of moving things toward slightly more liberty whenever possible. But I would say philosophically that I don't believe the government's role is to protect you from your own bad choices. Buckling your seatbelt, putting on your helmet are things that impact you and no one else. I guess they could impact other people indirectly through higher healthcare costs if you were to be injured. But I would certainly not be in favor of moving toward more of those things. I do buckle my seatbelt when I drive my car. I absolutely do not wear a helmet when I scooter because that would be and look ridiculous. And I see that most people do not, and it should absolutely be your choice.
Yeah.
I'm an old person. We don't need to flatter my good hair anymore. It's fine. We can move on from that. But I appreciate the well wishing.
We do.
Okay, here's something that divides libertarians. Question about Donald Trump. So I'm going to ask this one to Matt Welch. Is Donald Trump the least libertarian elected official in DC and perhaps the entire country? His unlibertarian positions are not only incredibly diverse, from free speech to immigration to corporate favoritism to tariffs, but also extreme, like when he claimed the power to send American residents with no criminal convictions to a foreign torture prison and then argued in court that those individuals shouldn't even have habeas corpus rights in the U.S. courts to challenge what he'd done to them. Surely there's no one less libertarian than that. This question comes from Lauren, who wrote it in with the word webathon in the subject line. Matt Welch, Donald Trump, not very libertarian. What do you think?
He's not very libertarian. Of course, he's not very libertarian. I mean, we've been writing about this since he arrived in our lives. I've been writing about this for the 2020 election. I want to look this way to Catherine because we're in the same room and
we're not here. Don't look at me, Matt. I'm hideous.
But I did the case. I did the case against Trump, and I think Jacob Sullivan did the case against Biden when I saw Trump at Freedom Fest in 2015. I think it was. I wrote one of the first things to make the very obvious point that he's the idiocracy candidate, and his attitudes about the Constitution, which I too think is a glorious liberty document, have been terrible from the beginning. I mean, we've forgotten about it now, but like in 2015, he was like, eminent domain is awesome. You know, like when the government uses it to like give like take a property from a private owner and give it to another one, that's great. What's wrong with you? Why are you all hung about Kelo versus the city of New London? So no, he's not a libertarian at all. I'm historically averse to because of my own limitations as someone who can just measure things. Like, is he the most non-libertarian? Is he the least libertarian person? He's the most powerfully impactful person who's not a libertarian in government, but just because he's been accruing tons of power and acting on it. He occasionally does libertarian things or things that libertarians like as well. Shutting the Department of Education. Robby's been trying to do that since he was in diapers. That's pretty cool. So like, I don't know how to measure that. I'm sure there's very awful and less libertarian politicians or people who are active in politics, but they just don't have his amount of power. But I take your criticisms of him, which I broadly share. I don't think that he's great for libertarianism. And if you're just, your baseline is just the size and scope of government, the record is right there in writing, let alone everything else.
He's just not ideological at all, right? I'm sure I could come up with the name of someone who is more ideologically committed to eroding liberty on a specific issue, but because he doesn't think ideologically at all, I mean, tomorrow he could say 2,000% tariffs on every nation, or he could say no tariffs, or he could say no more immigration to the U.S., or he could say only immigration from India, or he could say anything. It's not operating on the level of ideas in the category of which libertarianism occupies. So there's no way to evaluate him, except in very literally what the policies are. But there's no way to evaluate his philosophy vis-a-vis libertarianism. It's just it's apples to apples, apples to oranges. Apples to apples is the game. Apples to oranges.
It kind of feels like apples to apples sometimes, though. It's
Maybe.
like, who can say the silliest thing and that person wins?
Horseshoe, yeah.
That is what a podcast and apparently being president is all about these days. So look, we get a lot of questions about Donald Trump on the podcast, on the Reason Roundtable. We talk about Donald Trump all the time because Donald Trump in some ways is the news. He is the political news, and there's no way to avoid it. And we hear from people who say, you are too hard on Donald Trump. Why are you so hard on Donald Trump all the time? We also hear from people who say, you are too soft on Donald Trump. Why are you so soft on Donald Trump all the time? And this is what we do at Reason. We don't say Donald Trump is simply good or simply bad. We don't buy into that binary. That's not what we do. Instead, what we do is we say Donald Trump did something specific, and we either like it or we don't, or we sometimes have mixed and complicated feelings, and occasionally we even disagree with each other. And we do this because we think that that is the best way for libertarians to pursue and understand and think about politics, is not simply to say Donald Trump good or Donald Trump bad, but to look at each individual thing that he's doing and try to make a judgment, try to make an informed analytical judgment based on our priors, based on our worldview, based on the data, based on the facts. And so this is something that I think really makes Reason Magazine, libertarians, different from everybody else who are team pickers. And we just don't pick a team, and we don't pick a team with Donald Trump. And I think that makes us actually a little bit more interesting and something that is vital and needed in this time. Speaking of which, if you want something this vital and needed thing to continue and to be supported, you can support us right now. If you're joining us on YouTube, donate right here, just right below the little screen with the donate button. Otherwise, check the link in the podcast episode description. Facebook, X comments, go directly to reason.com/donate to donate right now and keep the Reason Roundtable going. We know so many of you like it. We appreciate hearing from so many of you. Let's go to another question for Katherine. This is a fun one, and I'm going to tell you, you have 30 seconds. You have only 30 seconds.
Why are
because
you being
I
so
know
mean before you even ask this question?
Because the question is, which roundtable member is which Muppet? And I know from experience that we could have that conversation for the very rest of this podcast.
That's true. And I would like to. But the main and most important answer to convey here is that Matt Welch is Fozzie Bear. And I just can't say that enough. Like, it's uncontroversially true. And if anyone disagrees and they are a donor, like, take your money back, because you're just wrong. I can't say that enough. Nick, who is absent, is obviously Gonzo. And so I think that's important to establish as well. Beyond that, it gets a little blurrier. There are definitely days when Robby is bringing more of a like animal energy.
I think we decided I was Miss Piggy, unfortunately.
But in fact, yes, the secret thing is that Robby is Miss Piggy, that he is the diva in our midst, and
whereas I like to think of her Lady Yoda, both voiced by Frank Oz.
Okay, and actually similar syntax from time to time, so that makes perfect sense. And Robby is also sometimes our Yoda, so doubly true.
Maybe.
Suderman is very tricky. Since he has stepped into his role as the host of the Reason Roundtable, I think he's giving a lot of Kermit, and I enjoy it.
Oh, thank you. Kermit D. Frog here. Okay, since
Nope.
since we were, this is a webathon podcast where you can donate. We are going to go to a question from Kevin, who is a confirmed donor. This is how you get your questions asked. It's by giving us your money. And I'm just going to start with Robby, but I want to go around to all of you really, really quickly. If time or money were not a barrier, what cultural thing would you like to have experienced in 2025?
I don't go to a lot of concerts now or historically or at any time, but I have become more nostalgic about everything, frankly, but about the rock music of my teenage years. And every year there's a concert, I think in Vegas or near Vegas, where they get like all the alt rock bands from the late 90s, early aughts that I love together. And I've never gone, but I would like to go some year.
Katherine, one cultural thing.
One cultural thing that I did do that was extremely uncharacteristic for me was also to go to a concert. I went to a Hozier concert, and I know that's embarrassing, and I also don't care because it was fantastic. It was me and 25,000 of my closest friends scream singing together, and it was excellent. Also embarrassing, I would have maybe liked to go. The original guy who performed Aaron Burr in Hamilton was back this year, and I thought about going to that. Sorry.
That's really cringe.
I'm so sorry, but it's true. And this person asked, and they gave us money, so I'm just bearing my soul.
Matt Welch, cultural thing.
Game 7 of the World Series. Greatest Game 7 in arguably the greatest World Series ever played. Would have loved to have seen it, and it would have been amazing.
I would have liked to go see the Wizard of Oz at the Sphere. I heard it was kind of amazing, kind of ridiculous. And I haven't been to the Sphere, and I've heard just nothing but good things about it. Okay, let's take a question from the live comments. This comes from a libertarian from Argentina who wonders if what we have with Milei could be exported to other countries. That's Javier Milei, who is probably the most libertarian national leader on the planet right now. Have you thought about how to push the cultural war in the US towards Milei-style ideas? Katherine, what do you say?
I think it is a little exportable, but I think, and I'm sure I'm not saying anything that this questioner doesn't already know. One reason it was possible in Argentina is because things were so bad. People really did get to a place where they kind of got like, oh, well, let's try this. I think that would certainly be harder to get to in the US. Doge was this, right? Like Doge was our go at Mileiism in some ways, but we didn't do it wholeheartedly. And so I do think one lesson there is like, it does have to be bottom up. Like it does have to be something that the people want. And I am hopeful that the places this can be exported is to Argentina's neighbors, because they're going to look and they're going to be like, oh, things look better there. We want that too.
So your answer is we should import a lot of Argentinans?
I don't think Argentinian is what we call them. But
Argentinians? Sorry.
Or Argentines.
Words.
Yep.
People from Argentina.
Yeah.
Seems like it's going pretty well there.
Anybody,
right.
Yeah, they're all welcome to come here.
Matt, I've got a question also from the comments, but from the comments from someone who donated. Folks, this is how you get your questions answered. Can't say it enough. How would you persuade your fellow libertarians that strengthening freedom movements abroad is good for liberty at home? Or would you? Most U.S. libertarians seem not to care.
Define strengthening, sir, or madam. That's the thing. Like, what does that mean? A lot of times strengthening comes in the form of the U.S. putting a thumb on a scale in a way that might temporarily strengthen a faction in a country, but also might discredit them when the ultimate contest of their country is discovered. We're seeing this right now in Venezuela. The Trump administration and Marco Rubio would love to do regime change without doing a war in Venezuela. It's pretty clear that they're trying to influence Maduro to go. So how do you strengthen those people? In my view, one of the great things that we did as a country in the 1970s and 80s is that members of the government, including the president, Ronald Reagan, but a whole lot of members of civil society, including many people on the left, had just normal human sympathy for people who lived in authoritarian regimes and were trying to fight for their freedoms. And they said, hey, it's bad when you put Adam Michnik in jail and when you crack down on Václav Havel's plays or whatever. Like, they expressed moral sympathy. I think that should go. That should be a natural impulse and the first impulse. I think people immediately want to go to the second impulse is like, well, let's fund them. Or the third impulse, well, let's fund them in order to maybe do a revolution. And I think that's where things get all tripped up. I'm all for strengthening people who are fighting authoritarian regimes, but I'm not for the US putting thumbs on the scale to dictate outcomes in foreign countries.
Okay, I want to do a question for the whole gang here. This comes from the Free Media comment section. Again, Robby is the host of Free Media. It's a great show. You should tune in. This question is, who are your top 5 libertarian writers or influences? Let's actually just do one. Robby, do you have a top libertarian writer or influence?
I am coming back more strongly than ever to Ayn Rand, frankly. I know that sounds ridiculous because I was never much of like a Rand person. But I watched her appearances on the Phil Donahue show when I was much younger and just kind of like fell in love with her. And I've increasingly been, now the issues we confront, I go back and look at what Rand said about them, including recently on the FCC. I wrote something for the magazine about what Ayn Rand had to say about Minnow, right? That was his name. That was the FCC chair in her day, who aspired to just a fraction of the control that Donald Trump's FCC has aspired to have. So I'm finding more and more lessons from her applicable to today's showdown between tech titans and would-be regulators than I thought was true 10 years ago.
Katherine, top libertarian writer influence?
I wrote about this in the magazine a while ago on the 50th anniversary of this book, but upon rereading it, The Machinery of Freedom by David Friedman really revealed itself to be the source of a lot of ideas that I thought maybe I had on my own. And I think that's like a real sign of a book that was important to you, is when it's sort of so embedded in your brain pathways that you can't quite remember the source. So rereading it was a pleasure in that way. And a good anarchist text for those who are asking questions.
For anarchists who also love the Constitution. Matt Welch, what about you?
If I'm being totally honest about most influential libertarian thinkers and humans on me, it's Reason magazine is going to be right in there. So I could either be nice to Nick.
Don't do it.
So Bob Poole deserves credit that he does not normally receive. And it's not just because he, along with Tibor Machan and Manny Klausner, helped kind of take a struggling but brilliant magazine off the hands of our genius founder, Lanny Friedlander, in 1971 and kind of professionalize it and help create and strengthen this institution. And then again, as a foundation beginning in the 1980s, all of which was great and heroic work that they did as a sideline. It was not any of their first jobs at all. They didn't have a single paid employee except for like a secretary until the 80s. It's crazy history, but it's not just all of that, which is great enough. And it's not just his fantastic work on doing transportation policy, which he's arguably the best and most influential just person, trying to improve transportation policies from the deregulation of airlines onward. It's not just that, but it's also his sort of cheerful way. One of the swag things that Katherine was talking about earlier was that one level you get invited to be able to apply to go to Reason Weekend, and at a higher level you actually get the ticket paid for. Those are two different things, and it's important to stress those out. Reason Weekend is this great thing that happens once a year, 3 or 4 days. The next one's in fancy place in Palos Verdes, near my home stomping grounds. And the best thing about Reason Wave, there's always like great speakers and interviews and all this stuff. The best thing every time is the 8 o'clock Saturday morning presentation of what Bob Poole has been doing to improve transportation policy since the last time you saw Bob Poole talk about it. Because Bob has got to be older than 50 by now, since he's been doing this since 1971. He might even be older than 60. And he's faced so much resistance to these ideas, and he's so cheerful about it, and he's just going on and trying to methodically, like an engineer, which he was, an aerospace engineer, make the world a better place. And it is just absolutely inspirational, that kind of methodical progress towards liberty and doing the hard work and just smiling all the while. So Bob Poole is my North Star, and Nick Gillespie is having a baby.
So he is, but we've got Robby Soave and Matt Welch and Katherine Mangu-Ward here for our special live webathon edition of the Reason Roundtable, where you can give us your money. If you're joining on YouTube, you can donate right here. Right here, it's at the bottom of the screen. I can see it. I've got multiple screens in front of me, but I can see it this one. Otherwise, you could check the link in the podcast episode description, Facebook, X comments, or just go directly to reason.com/donate. I'm going to answer that question. This was top 5. It's not actually going to be top 5. It is going to be 4 people, but it's really just 2. Because here's the thing about me. Yeah, I'm moderator. I get to my own rules. Sorry, my own rules. I am running the show. That's exactly right. Private authoritarianism is good, as you well know, boss. So as I've said many times before, that I did not come to libertarianism. I wasn't, in some sense, sort of convinced by it. I just realized that was the thing I already was. It's like I tried on a bunch of other clothes and they didn't fit right. And then I put on the libertarian shirt and was like, oh, this is really comfortable. And I like that. Yeah, this is right for me. And the reason why was because I grew up reading science fiction. Robert Heinlein in particular, but then Neil Stephenson a little bit later. 2 folks who have just been incredibly influential on my thinking, on my ideas. Heinlein in particular, was just outlining in science fiction form, so many of the ideas that became core to the kind of Reason ideology. Like, he got there before Reason existed and fleshed them out in these sort of great space adventures. Strongly recommend The Moon is a Harsh Mistress and Stranger in a Strange Land. Both just fantastic, weird, brilliant pulp novels, very entertaining. But the other thing is, since Matt did not say Nick Gillespie, I will say Nick Gillespie, but also Virginia Pastrol, because after I got into Washington in my 20s, what did I start doing? I was reading an awful lot of magazines. And who was I reading? I was reading Nick Gillespie and Virginia Pastrol. And they were the folks who still, in so many ways, sort of like laid down the foundation for how I think about what a Reason libertarian is, which is what I am. Nick and I argue on the podcast all the time, but I have said it before, I will say it again. Nick was incredibly influential in helping me understand the thing that I already was, which was a Nick Gillespie, Virginia Pastrol style Reason libertarian. Okay, so let's go to a question for Matt. This comes from the free media comments, but I think Matt's a good person to answer this. Based on your views as a libertarian, what are the pros and cons of the role of unions in a free market economy?
I don't know, man. What do you think?
That's good work.
Don't ask me.
My big, all I really care about with unions, or the thing they care about most, is that I don't like public sector unions at all. And at various moments, you can get me thinking that should just kind of be outlawed. There's an argument for it. I haven't really thought about it that much, but I don't like them. And I don't like the fact that in the kind of places that I tend to live, the public sector unions overwhelmingly support one political party who they then negotiate their wages with, which is then paid with my tax money. I just like, that seems bad, right? That's no good. In the private sector, which is where the question is, I don't pay all that much attention to it. I've never really worked in a unionized place or industry. I've been a business owner several times. I couldn't imagine what a union would be doing of use there. I think in places where there is an artificial constraint on the supply of work, and I'm thinking here in places like Major League Baseball, which is something that I know a little bit, that private sector unions can do great things in those situations. I don't know out of a personal experience how that would work at the movie theater that I worked at or whatever. So I'm kind of agnostic. I just don't want the government to have a lot of rules about telling people how they should or should not join a union or have their wages taken in order to support a union. If it's all done by private will, great, knock yourself out.
All right, speaking of rules and telling people what to do, let's have another question about Reason's D&D game for Robby. Regarding the fabled Reason D&D game, I just want to know more. What can you tell us about it without spoilers or giving away proprietary information? Who plays? What do they play? What are the classes, gods they worship, etc.? Is it as chaotic a party as I would imagine a table full of libertarians to be, or not? And are you the sort of dungeon master who bans paladins either because you don't understand them or because they wouldn't fit at a libertarian table? That comes from Leonard. Robby, tell us about the Reason D&D game to the extent you can. And remember, we're watching.
Yeah, I won't call out Katherine, Peter, the specific people on this podcast who play. I don't ban paladins, although I will note that I think the Reason group has never picked a paladin class for any of the. I think we've restarted maybe 3 or 4 times, so we've gone through a lot of character classes, and that is definitely an underpicked and possibly never picked one, which is interesting. I think it's a great class. In vague terms, I would say so. I love doing it. I'm a creative, imaginative, making up fantasy worlds type person. The D&D that I run is homebrew in that the storyline is all my own. The characters are almost all my own. I occasionally incorporate a setting from the proper Dungeons and Dragons materials. I've used, for instance, Saltmarsh and Icewind Dale, the Arctic Northern campaign, and some ideas contained therein. And I've used some of the D&D pantheon. I particularly like Lolth, the goddess, the spider goddess of the Drow, and Primus, who's a time god that I've kind of reconfigured for my purposes. But it's the fun part is the collaborative storytelling that takes place. So we don't get to play every week. I wish we could. We play once a month. So I basically structure it as like a prestige television show that's going to get 8 to 10 episodes a year. And there's going to be it's building towards some kind of satisfying climactic arc in the 9th episode. But you can't structure it that much because it feels it's wrong. If the worst mistake a DM can make is try to have it be, no, it has to happen this way on this agenda, then it feels forced. Recently, in fact, this campaign we're doing right now, the players have they've gone through the obstacles much more slowly than I anticipated. They broke out of a prison, took a lot longer than I thought, and that's just fine. And it's fun. And they've brought some of those other prisoners along with them that I thought were going to be really one-note, non-playable characters, and they're still trucking along, and it's great. It's fun. I recommend it a lot to new people. Maybe someday I'll give my Robby's guide to just advice for new DMs. But it's a fun thing. Shout out to CJ who started us off. Yes,
shout out to CJ. That's what I was going to say. CJ
Ciaramella, who kicked us off on this. It's a lot of fun, and different tables play different ways, but we're not overly obsessed with the rules and the mechanics of combat. We are kind of acting out a story together, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that the most important thing for people to know is that our group disproportionately will talk its way out of a fight, try a gambit where we pretend that one member of our group is our prisoner, and we just are going to try to walk through the front door. We do a lot of
never worked, and we keep trying it.
Never worked. But this time around, I will reveal that I am playing a dwarf fighter, and I just have like 2 swords that when I hit things, they do a lot of damage, and I'm really enjoying it. So look forward to my dwarf fighter era, not just in D&D, but in my life.
It's been a couple of years, but my very first character was a bard who was also a bartender, and just kind of bizarrely.
It's better when you try to portray a character. Actually, Jason, our colleague Jason, is very good, I think, at playing characters who are unlike him in real life.
And Jason has a great newsletter about the sports balls. If anyone would like to sign up for it, it's called Free Agent, and you can read it.
If you like
Jason Russell.
Games and rules and that sort of thing. Okay, so this is Reason's Webathon live special episode where you can ask us anything. Why are we taking your donations? Something that I think people don't always know about Reason or don't always understand is that we are not a big corporate podcast, magazine, newsletter. We are a nonprofit, like actually a nonprofit, incorporated as a 501c3, which means that your donations are what allow us to keep doing what we do. That is is how we are funded every single year. The podcast, the magazine, all of the videos that you love that are produced by Reason TV, Robby's free media and newsletter, Jason's sports newsletter. Absolutely everything we do is funded by donations because we are a nonprofit. So if you want to give to Reason to support our work, to keep us to keep us going, right, to support the podcast, to support the magazine, all of our videos, you can do that right now with the donate button here on YouTube. But you can also go to reason.com/donate, and that tees up actually a question that I want to ask Katherine, which is, do you donate any of your time or money to charity? And are your views on charitable giving informed by your libertarianism?
They are, and I do. So Robby referenced Ayn Rand, who obviously had complicated visions about and views about altruism. But I think that if I'm going to go around saying things like maybe the government shouldn't do that because the private sector could do it better, or private charity could fill the gap, that it's pretty important to practice what I preach on that front. So I give to Give Well and Give Directly, which are both kind of what their names imply. Charities that launder your money in an extremely direct way to causes that they have vetted or that have like very, very high yields. So this is stuff like the Buying the Lady in Kenya a Cow type deal, but also just charities that are very high ranked that I don't have to do all the research about. I give to the Bridget Alliance, which helps women who live in states that have abortion restrictions travel to get abortions, because that issue is really important to me and has become more important in recent years. I give to the Humane League, which is a animal rights type group, but they mostly focus on like good fake meat and that kind of thing, like more private solutions. And I give to my mushroom church because Reason. And I give
Can
to
you
Reason.
say one more sentence about the mushroom church?
There are organizations in this country that have the Supreme Court's semi-blessing and also the IRS's semi-blessing to administer plant medicines, psychedelics, as part of their church activities. And I think that that's cool. And I'm into it and I support it. But yeah, so I give to Reason also because it's a good cause and you should support
The
it.
Church of Tripping Balls. All right, Matt Welch, we're not going to ask about the mushroom church here, but I do want to ask you about boiled frogs. This question comes from Carl. For years, we've been boiled frogs, gradually accepting presidential expansions of power. So Iraq, drone killings of American supporters of terrorism, drug war, all of that stuff. So is it possible the current highly disruptive administration is an imperfect but necessary Richter Erectus behind the wheel moment? That's a Mad Max reference for those who don't know Fury Road, great movie. A shock that might finally awaken the country to the cumulative abuses of power before we go over what seemed like the inevitable cliff edge we have been driving towards. I think that metaphor makes sense. Very glad that there was a Fury Road reference there. But like executive power, are the abuses that we are seeing right now maybe going to wake people up to how bad it has gotten?
Yeah, man, because like ever since Trump came in, we've seen less executive power abuse. We've seen what? No, no. I don't mean to be flip, but I also mean to be flip. There's wishful thinking that is laced through this question that I'm familiar with. I've heard it many times, and not just about Trump. Like, if we just get to this level, then the people will wake up. And the federal government, when Trump became president, was spending $3.6 trillion a year, and now it's up around $7 trillion. So that seems larger, even if you do the little adjustment for inflation and population as well. And then we're moving way more towards just an executive branch, an executive government, as opposed to having a legislature, as opposed to having, the courts are still in play. And I don't think that having more of that, just like the actual experience of seeing Trump, Biden, Trump, I think should disabuse us of the notion that it's going to provoke a reaction in which people say, gosh, we should give the president less power. That could have been a reaction the Democrats had to Trump the first time around. Could have been a reaction the Republicans had to Obama. And it kind of was for half a second in Obama's first term. But no, what it is that people say, well, no, we have to use that power to smash our enemies harder in the mouth, and then do the things that we want to do and enrich our friends and our family. and somehow only then we're going to, no, it's not going to work like that. I think there will be a moment when we have an unspeakable crisis in this country, probably sooner rather than later, and that the voting population might have some suddenly different ideas about various things. But I don't think the way to get there is by having a very radical, very uncouth, power aggrandizing president crash his way around the China shop.
My medium-term concern here is actually that after Donald Trump is no longer in office, if Democrats take power, they are going to use every single abuse of power that they complained about, in many cases correctly, that Donald Trump and the MAGA world did. They're going to say, well, he did it, and you guys were fine with it, so we're going to do it now too. And it's actually just going to get worse. That is my worry over the next 5 to 10 years here. Not, I think, a super happy outlook. I hope I am wrong about this. Okay, Katherine, a question from the live chat here from Randy Chang with a number. Is libertarianism exclusively a first world movement?
No, absolutely not. And I should have mentioned one more charity that I give to. So thank you so much, Randy, for reminding me. Students for Liberty is a group I give to, and I am on the board of, and I love, and that is because they understand that libertarianism is very much not only a first world movement. A bunch of the gains that they have made as an institution, which they foster, as the name implies, especially young people all around the world who are pursuing liberty for themselves and for their countries. In Africa, they have made just like there are a bunch of chapters there that are really large and doing really interesting things. There have been there's a group in Burma that's like there's a whole situation going down there. There's a Nepal situation. Like you can read all day, every day, and learn all day, every day about young people who are way more libertarian than you and I could ever hope to be, who are truly laying their lives on the line for explicitly the ideas of liberty. And of course, that's not even getting into Students for Liberty's role in the Milei revolution and other Latin American liberty movements, where they're literally holding up signs that say Mises, not Marx. And so libertarianism is everywhere. Not everyone uses that word, classical liberal sometimes, just liberal sometimes. But I think the notion that somehow libertarianism is like a luxury good or like a first world thing is so profoundly wrong. And Students for Liberty's work, and also the work of the Atlas Network organizations, demonstrates that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And just to add, if you're feeling too depressed, actually, about the state of liberty in the U.S., I highly encourage you to check out the work of those two organizations. I've been very involved in Students for Liberty really my entire adult life. It came into being while I was an undergraduate at the University of Michigan and was part of my introduction to places like Reason Magazine and Cato and others. And the work they do in Africa and South America and Asia is just really inspiring and actually puts in perspective the problems and the issues we deal with here.
Yeah, Students for Liberty, just incredibly inspiring. Every time you go to their conference, you're like, well, here in the United States, things are rough. And they are. There's a lot that's wrong in the United States. But then you see what libertarians in other countries are going through and the kind of state abuses and what they're going through in countries, with authoritarian governments where they just don't have the Constitution. They don't have the Bill of Rights. They don't have the expectation of kind of freedom to speak and act that we have here. And it's really, it's inspiring and it's incredible. Let's continue this, talking a little bit more about students. I want to actually ask Robby, but also maybe a little bit Matt, about school choice. So this question comes from Dylan. It's questions about school choice, and in particular, the idea of moving from a centrally controlled bureaucracy to a backpack funding mechanism, which is something that we support here at Reason. What, if any, are the means by which prices are controlled in this particular program? Looking at higher ed grants, loans, they occupy a similar spot to backpack funding. We've seen ballooning costs for education. So it's hard for Dylan to see how this won't replicate with backpack funding, but maybe there's something he doesn't know. He would like the Reason editors to explain, why do we support backpack funding? Matt Welch, let's start with you.
Let's start with Robby. He's
all right, Robby.
I'll go first. I did think about this question a little bit. It's a great question, and it does get to something I've noticed, and that is very bad. namely that if you subsidize something, you distort the price of it. I still think the backpack system is an improvement over our current system in just that giving people more choice and control, families more choice and control over the education they're going to get is going to be improvement. But the question asker is technically right that over the long enough period of time, even the private educational options, the schools would just raise their cost by the amount of money you were subsidizing it. So it is true in a narrow sense that if the government subsidizes something but also exercises no control over what that thing costs, you're going to get some distortions in the market, as we've seen with healthcare and as we've seen with student loans, because the government fronts all the money up front. The provider of the service, the university, can actually raise the price nearly infinitely because you're not paying for that. You're not going to the grocery store and saying, wow, crackers cost too much, I'm buying this other brand of crackers instead. That is destroyed by having it be done this way. And would that eventually happen under the backpacking model? I guess over a long enough time period it would. So really, you do have to we're against price fixing, but if you are going to subsidize something, you do actually have to put some constraint on what it is allowed to cost under a system where the government pays for it.
Well, I would
Matt
also
Welch.
say that's just like the compare it to our current arrangement.
Yes.
Argument,
Right.
which should never be underestimated. Like compared to just a totally free, unregulated market in which people spend whatever money they want to spend on the education of their children, it's going to be less good. But compared with the totally immune from consumer choice, totally immune from price signals, totally immune from anything except for political considerations of the current model, it's vastly preferable. And in fact, the comparison is already there, which is how has the US K through 12 educational model done in the last 30 years versus how have universities done? Not to say that universities are perfect, far from it, but I think we can agree that the record of that batch of educational institutions over that period is so much better than K-12, and that is largely due to the ways in which they are funded.
And it's also,
Matt, you want to take it?
Yeah, just that. So far as I know, and my knowledge is inferior to Robby's and Katherine's, but the backpack funding programs that exist, it's not giving you the exact same amount of per student funding that you get, say, where I live in New York City, where it's $40,000 per student. So it's not like they're taking $40,000 and giving it to families and saying, spend it how you want. It's usually they'll give 12,000 or 7,500 or some much smaller number. So thinking it through, the way that that's going to affect the economics of the current model is that is going to open up the idea it's going to peel off people from the existing very expensive free system to the free but no choice system to, I have money now and I have more choice to go. I will go and spend it here because I can now sort of choose my child's outcome a little bit better. Then that means that the local school has fewer students, and in most, certainly big cities, their funding formula is a per student funding formula, especially as pertains to the federal government. So they get less money. So it's going to affect them. They're going to have fewer teachers. They're going to be able to spend less money. In theory, that'll be less taxpayer money. So there's all kinds of economic stuff that would have to be worked out in advance before we get to this place where we're just like subsidizing the price through the roof.
All right, shout out to Ed Weird 2W1, who just gave us a donation of $50. Didn't even ask a question, just wants to listen along. Thank you so much, Ed Weird. Be like Ed Weird. If you want to donate, you can donate right here in YouTube. If you're following along on YouTube, right, just at the bottom of the screen, just right there below what I'm pointing at, right? Just give us your money that way, or you can go to reason.com/donate. Check the comments on X or Facebook, whatever platform you are on. Thank you so much, Ed Weird. Next question is for Katherine. Very simple. It comes from Michael. My question is, can you be a libertarian and a person of faith?
Of course you can. Absolutely. And in fact, my argument from anecdote here is that Reason's application pool is increasingly rife with Catholics in particular. I don't know what's going on, but I have some theories.
A lot of Catholics in the mix.
One of my theories is just the magical and magnetic power of Stephanie Slade, who has shown the way. She was once Reason's kind of resident Catholic, now one of many, and has written very, very powerfully about the ways that being a person of faith and being a libertarian are, in fact, not just possible, but really support each other and are peanut butter and chocolate, basically. I do think that as people of faith feel that they are increasingly under threat from a variety of state forces, potentially censorship, potentially kind of bake the cake type stuff, they might, they come to one or two conclusions. And one is, well, we better seize power for ourselves and do a theocracy. Plenty of people, many such cases, who have come to that conclusion. But there are also the better, smarter people who think to themselves, oh, what if we made a society where there was space for people with different ideas about the best life to live their own way? The relationship between liberty and virtue is one about which much ink has been spilled, including the ink that will be spilled on Stephanie Slade's new book, which is coming out next year.
It's going to be great. So excited. All right.
Real quick. If people like that kind of thing, they should donate to Reason, because then we can pay for Stephanie Slade to write her book.
Oh,
just an idea.
That's right. You can donate to Reason here on YouTube, also at reason.com/donate. Check the comments on X or Facebook if that's where you are. You can be like Sneaky Manatee, who donated $100 and has a question. Sneaky Manatee, this is a good question.
So
is that CJ?
This is a question.
Is it CJ? Are you CJ Ciaramella?
CJ Ciaramella, our original Dungeon Master, and who wrote a great piece about Dungeons and Dragons for Reason Magazine a number of years ago, if you want a specifically libertarian take about that. But in fact, this is a question that asks us not to talk about Dungeons and Dragons or mushrooms. Give me a concise elevator speech of what libertarianism is without D&D, without Mushroom Church, and without Mad Max references. Sorry. A quick synopsis that would resonate with voters. So because of the voters part, we're going to go to Matt Welch, who was at one point editor-in-chief of the nation's premier libertarian magazine.
So mean to him, Peter.
Yeah, man.
Okay, I don't think this question asker is CJ anymore. I will say I don't think that's a very CJ-ish question, but I do respect the manatee.
My favorite definition of libertarianism comes from Reason's own historian of the libertarian movement, Brian Doherty, who in, I think, the preface of Radicals for Capitalism, his magisterial book of 20 years or so hence about it, said, it's in your Jefferson. That's the way I take it. But it's in your Jefferson. It's that which governs least governs best. It's get off my back, religious toleration, virtue, yes, and pursuit of excellence and all of that, please. A little, embracing of personal inconsistencies.
Jefferson's case.
Try to be a little bit aspirational there, but he had a radical notion of freedom that we're all still trying to completely fill out and inhabit, and I think that's wonderful and beautiful. There's a reason why I think libertarianism, in addition to springing forth from a number of economists and other types of people and philosophers, just kind of has always been more fertile in American soil. It is in the DNA of this country at some fundamental level. We don't want people telling us what to do, to tell us what to do with our property, to tell us what to do with our lives. Occasionally there will be some minority government rabble who try to tell a majority, or a majority to try to tell a minority what to do and what they can't do, and eventually they're going to lose, I think. And I think part of that is just sort of a cussed American sense of independence and willingness, or like insistence on pursuing happiness as we see fit. So I root it in Americanism. That's not a simple one sentence declaration.
That was a long
definition.
Elevator ride.
I don't care, man.
That was a long
I don't care.
But in fact,
we're at the top of the World Trade Center now.
I said it's in your Jefferson. There it is.
The thing you pointed to is the right answer that does resonate with voters. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Government is there to guarantee life and liberty to some degree, liberty being a big, important part of that, and also the pursuit of happiness. Not happiness, actually, not the guarantee of it, but you get to kind of go out and do your own thing and figure it out for yourself. And embedded in that is I think an ideal of tolerance and respect for differences of opinion, and for being willing to just talk with people who you disagree with, which is something that we do here at Reason all the time. If you want to support us, you can do so just by donating at the very bottom of this screen, right? There's instructions on how to do it. Also reason.com/donate, other platforms. But that actually tees up our next question, which is for Robby, which is about talking to other people. This question comes from Frank, who asks, first of all, how are you so suave? But any tips for staying calm while having conversations with people that have irrational political opinions? Maybe
Why
even
would you
on this
ask
podcast.
Robby? Why
Yeah.
would you ask
First of all,
Robby?
because that question was specifically targeted at Robby by Frank. So, but also, Robby, I think you have some experience talking to people who maybe are perceived as having irrational political opinions.
Catherine's recoiling at this because I'm known as something of a rage monster around the Reason office itself, where I'm always like kicking over chairs in blind fury, because Reason is my emotional safe space. And so I bring my frustrations about other aspects of my life to the office and make everybody listen to my trauma and go, there, it's fine, it's fine. But on camera, which I am increasingly just on camera all the time, involved in Rising and Free Media and Two-Way and a bunch of other video products. I do a lot of discussion, debating with people of all ideological perspectives, and I think I do a pretty good job of remaining calm mostly. I've definitely had my fly off the handle moments. They've gone viral on occasion. I think you're allowed one of those every so often, but if you're doing it constantly, then you're not going to be emotionally or psychologically well. I also don't enjoy listening to that, frankly. I know some people do. Watch people scream over each other in the internet format where somebody has to get muted and it's so uncomfortable. I can't stand watching things like that, but some people like it. Look, I'm just trying to incrementally move toward people toward liberty to the best I can. I know that mostly the conflict of the debates we have are not about convincing the other person. We're about to do a Reason Versus event next Wednesday. Me and Elizabeth Nolan Brown will be arguing with Ryan Grimm and Emily Jashinsky of Breaking Points about whether big tech is good or bad for society. None of the four of us are going to walk away from that having changed our minds even slightly, but we're not really arguing with each other for that purpose. We are trying to persuade people in the audience or people watching online who maybe haven't made up their mind about it, or will maybe consider something about it that they hadn't previously. So that's just the spirit I take to these things. Obviously, if you're like a short-tempered rage monster, political debate is not for you these days. You should just tune it out, and that's fine. That's a perfectly healthy psychological choice. But I still enjoy mixing it up with people and leaving it on the field. The good thing about even those very contentious interviews I've had with Brianna Joy Gray and other people over the years, debates, they're pretty professional people too. And even though we like scream at each other, like 5 minutes later, we're fine and we hang out in real life. And it's mostly, it's not fake, but it's just you move on from it and it doesn't affect your real life relationships for the most part.
For those who want to see that debate, which will feature Robby, and I'll be on stage as the moderator, that's next week at the Miracle Theater in Washington, D.C., December 10th, has Robby Soave, Elizabeth Nolan Brown from Reason, Emily Jashinsky, and Ryan Grimm from Breaking Points. They're going to be debating big tech does more good than harm. This is part of the Reason Versus debate series. You can get tickets still at reason.com/versus. It is going to be a good debate and a good conversation. And in fact, the goal will be to change people's minds. There's going to be a vote at the beginning, another vote at the end, and one team will win here. So I want to talk a little bit about sort of where we are, maybe where we might not be libertarian, or like be just a little bit outside the bounds of libertarianism. This is a question from a Free Media commenter who writes, what is your most nationalist, least libertarian conservative policy position you hold? Matt Welch, let's start with you, but I want to go around the table here, so let's go quick.
The nationalist thing has kind of thrown me for a loop, but least libertarian these days is I really don't like gambling ads in sports. I
Mm.
don't necessarily want the government to outlaw it, but I think it's awful, and I wish I'd never see them again.
Katherine, most nationalist, least libertarian policy position.
I am the one true Scotsman, and so everything I believe is the official libertarian position, as you know. But I think my most nationalist view is I do believe that the United States is the greatest country in the world. Like, I believe that very inflexibly. You're not going to sway me from that view. And even when we are really not doing our best work, I have a little feeling about our founding 250 years ago. Thank you, Matt. And also the way that we have played that out. So I am like very, in my little heart, I have like a big foam finger that says USA, and I'm just like, we're number one. So I guess
10 seconds of follow up, and also to answer the nationalist part of the question. When I see, as I did last night, an account of how America won a battle in 1777.
You're like, we did that?
No, I'm like, yeah!
And now you want tariffs.
Yeah.
Robby, what's your answer?
I am very much no longer Reason's resident young person. I am very middle-aged. And as I get older, I succumb to a kind of knee-jerk nostalgia for the past or for the period of my childhood and teenage years, which for me coincides with the 90s, which I know everyone thinks the period of their adolescence was the greatest time in human history, but the 90s does feel like the apex of our civilization. And while that doesn't necessarily, like movies and TV were, maybe TV wasn't better, but movies look better. I'm so sick of the fakeness and the artificiality of CGI and everything we're besieged with now. Yeah.
We got 15 minutes here. You want to do it all in Wicked?
There's no political necessary implications from any of this, but some of that is downstream of a romanticizing the past and things were better before, blah, 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 and so on. I find myself more vulnerable to those arguments than I was 5 or 10 years ago.
Thank you all for tuning in here. I'm told we have thousands of people who are tuned into this live stream across various platforms, which is just incredible. Really, just one part of I took over hosting the roundtable this year. Matt Welch had sort of built it up and and defined what it is we do for so many years. Did such a great job. But it's been really kind of an honor and a thrill. And part of it is that you get to meet and talk to people who listen to the roundtable. And it's so wonderful to know that there are so many of you out there. I think of this not just as a conversation between 4 of us every week, but as a conversation between the 4 of us and all of our listeners. Right? It's kind of like a dinner party or a cocktail party. I know cocktail parties in Washington are bad. When I throw them, they are good. And we throw Reason throws a cocktail party podcast every single Monday that you can listen to. And if you like it, you can support it by donating to Reason at the link below or at reason.com/donate. Facebook, X comments, you can figure out there's so many different ways. This is Reason's big webathon week. If you want to support Reason, this is the time. Obviously, one of the big themes on the podcast and at Reason generally is reducing the size of government. But I've got a question here about maybe there's some trade-offs with this that I want to ask Katherine in particular. When reducing the size of government, what do we owe people who have come to depend on it? Not every recipient of government largesse is a scheming defense contractor or a sports team owner who can rightly be kicked to the curb. A lot of beneficiaries are just getting by under a system they did little to create. This is a question from Mark, who is a podcast listener.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier about abolishing Social Security. And while I absolutely do want to do that, I think we would be self-defeating morons to go first for programs that have this nature that you've just described, because of course there are programs, you might argue SNAP, although SNAP has kind of raged out of control in a bunch of ways that are well documented. Certainly Social Security and other kind of old age entitlements, as well as some sort of social safety net programs. Listen, I think the world and this country would genuinely be a better place if the government did not perform those functions. But there are a lot of things to do first that are unambiguously, clearly ways to cut the government that will not hurt people who are the least well off in the short run. I also think, this and in everything, imposing kind of political uncertainty, or like making people absorb political risk in their own private lives, is one of the reasons that I think we should get the state out of people's lives, because it totally sucks to not know what your retirement funds are going to be like, because you don't know whether you can trust the people who have governed you to plan appropriately for the money that they promised you. So in the long run, I think it helps those people the most to get the government out. In the short run, I think it's not going to help us in our cause if we go after that stuff first.
So the next question is about being a libertarian in a relationship. So we're going to go around here. You guys can say whatever you want about this, but this comes from a free media commenter. Does your significant other share the same libertarian worldview as you? And if not, how do you deal with that? I can't imagine my husband and I having vastly different worldviews. Robby, let's start with you.
I think when you're in a romantic relationship, your views tend to coalesce over time. That was certainly true in my previous relationship. In my current relationship, I find myself much more interested in the fate of the island of Taiwan than I used to. Let me just say that.
That's an Easter egg. Katherine?
I met my husband when we were very young in college in a debating society where we both argued on the kind of libertarian side of many issues. So I cannot answer questions about major political differences in a relationship, because there are actually two true Scotsmans. It's me and my husband.
Matt?
Overlap, sympathy, good vibes, not an exact control V. And I think that's all to the normal.
So I am married to Megan McArdle, the Washington Post columnist, who is widely
Wouldn't it be
known
funny, Peter,
as...
if you were revealing that for the first time?
Yeah.
Somehow kept that secret.
What if we were all like,
saved that for the very end of the Webathon podcast. That's where you got to listen all the way through every week, folks. And she is a libertarian, and she is a different style libertarian than me. And so in some ways, being married to a libertarian is a way to have some discussions occasionally about politics, and like maybe you don't always necessarily agree, and it's not because you have totally different worldviews. It's because you have it's because you got the same one, and it's libertarianism, and every libertarian kind of a little bit different. All right. So we've only got a couple more minutes here. Like I said, about 10 more minutes. If you want to donate, you still have time. If you are listening to this after the fact, because this will go up on YouTube and elsewhere after the live is over. If you are listening to this, you can just go to reason.com/donate, or Webathon is going to be extended into the early part of next week. We appreciate your donations. They are what keep us going. They are what keep the Reason Roundtable, free media, all of our podcasts, all of our videos going. So let's do a question for Matt here about the rest of the world. Many nations have had direct experience with authoritarian government. Their cultural and particularly literary output shows this. Since the revolution, the United States has mostly avoided direct experience with authoritarianism, and our cultural exploration of the concept has been basically just science fiction, like I talked about, or alternate history involving a war. The greatest literary warnings in English about totalitarianism have not been written by Americans, but by Brits like Huxley and Orwell. So is America culturally blind to the possibility of authoritarian government? Are there any truly effective American literary works showing it can happen here? This comes from podcast listener Michael. Matt Welch.
I think that you can't just hand wave science fiction out of this story. Science fiction is an important literary genre, and America has always done it really, really well. And interestingly, and anti-authoritarianism or exploration of totalitarian ideas has always been part of that. I don't consume one trillionth of the movies and audiovisual entertainment as Peter Suderman does, probably not even 1/10 of Katherine. And I feel like, and the many whole genres within that I don't pay any attention to, especially like zombies. But like when they're doing zombies, that's usually like, I'm trying not to look at Katherine. They're talking about like bad states, aren't they? Like it's like authoritarian.
Sometimes
it's complicated.
I feel like with superhero stuff, with a lot of modern Hollywood, with TV stuff, with Philip K. Dick adaptations, that I don't feel like it's being underrepresented in the culture. Hunger Games was recently, I think, and that stuck with my daughters pretty strongly. So I'm not sure that I think it's a fascinating question. The literary, the book aspect of it, I'm super interested by people who have more experience than I do, but I'm not sure that the premise is correct. I think there's great English authors, but there's also potentially quite a lot of American content.
Robbie, I swear
Katherine.
to God, I swear to God, you are not allowed to say Harry Potter right now. I know that's British. I know that's not American, but like
Read another
book. Handmaid's Tale. We got Plot Against America. We got we got a lot of anti-authoritarian literature up in this joint.
Yeah, it's true that a lot of it is science fiction, but I do think you can't. You could overrate the Hunger Games, but you shouldn't. Like, it would be hard. The Hunger Games wasn't just a book. It wasn't just a couple of books and then some movies with Jennifer Lawrence. It was an entire genre for like a decade. I mean, you could go to Barnes and Noble and they had shelves. I mean, it was a joke on Twitter where it was like teen YA dystopian authoritarianism YA novels, right? It was like a whole shelf of them. And they're basically all just Hunger Games ripoffs, and most of them were not as successful as the Hunger Games. But the whole thing is, for the last 15 years, after Harry Potter, sorry, Katherine, some of the most popular books for teenagers have been the Hunger Games and Hunger Games style books, all of which are maybe not exactly like the perfect, reason worldview, like all the way down the line, but they are extremely powerful portrayals of a dystopian, authoritarian society, how it goes wrong, and in particular, what it does to young people, to the youth, how it just sort of messes things up generationally. All right,
Also
we
very
have
important anti-authoritarianism for girls. It's important, man. You got to have your braid, you got to have a bow and arrow, and then you're good to go.
They ladyfied it, which is good because not all the libertarians have been
of anti-authoritarianism. Stay tuned for my TED Talk.
Also, these are all downstream of Ayn Rand, of what is that novella Anthem, which is the original. You were sorted into the circles and I was sorted into the squares, but I want to be a circle and you want to be a square, and we should invent capitalism.
All right, thank you.
That's totally
thank you. It's not wrong. Thank you to the thousands of people who tuned into this live stream and the many more who I know are going to watch and listen to this after the fact. Thank you to all of the people who donated on this live stream. Read out a couple of your names, but I'm just it's so wonderful to to talk to all of you, to see all of this, right? To see your comments in the live stream, see everybody having fun, right? You are what make Reason possible, what makes the Roundtable possible every week. We're on YouTube. We're on everywhere you get your podcast. So tune in, subscribe, all of that. We have just a couple of minutes left. So what I want to do actually is just go around this group. Everybody make your one specific case for why, if you haven't donated yet, you should donate to Reason this webathon. Matt Welch, let's start with you. One reason why people should donate to Reason this year.
Media is collapsing. We are the antidote to the mania.
Katherine.
You should give to Reason because it's going to give you warm fuzzies. And I know that making the good feelings case is not entirely characteristic of me, but I think that, even for those of us who are sort of allergic to tribalism, you want to be a part of a tribe you can respect. And being in our live stream with us and commenting and coming to our events and subscribing and doing all those things, it really does make you part of a tribe that hates tribes. And I like being in there. And so enjoy the warm fuzzies of that.
When did you take the mushrooms?
Mind your business, Matt.
The tax-free mushrooms. Robby.
I will echo and expand upon a bit Matt Welch's point that the media is collapsing, is fragmenting in all sorts of different ways, and media organizations that have been around for years and years and years have all been challenged by this new social media milieu and everything that's happening. Reason is a island of sanity and also stability in a sea of absolute craziness. I can say this from personal experience without giving more details than that, based on if people have watched me on all sorts of other properties, all the other things I've involved in. It is Reason where I come to lay the problems of those experiences for emotional support with the people here, because Reason is sane and stable and will be around and will not suddenly pivot to some wild idea or some fancy or trendy new ideology. It will keep continuing to deliver the quality journalism and conversations you have become accustomed to for the last 50 years and will for the next 50 years. That is a promise we can easily make to you, and why your money will be well spent here.
You have to support the things you love. And this is, I think, something that people have learned more and more over the past decade, and in particular in the years after the pandemic. If you want something to exist in the world, you have to support it. Like, it is your donations, it's your money, it's your support that makes all of this possible. And you see this all over, especially in this fractured media landscape that we are living in right now. The things that survive, the things that do well, the things that make an impact on the world, those things are supported by people who care about them and keep them alive. And that's you. That's you and the checks you write, or I guess people don't write checks anymore, but that's you and the donations you give by pushing the little button at the bottom of the screen, right? But like, that's the only way that anything in this crazy media landscape will continue to exist. That's the only way that it will continue to thrive. And then the other reason is, if you're a libertarian and you want more libertarians to exist in the world, the Reason Roundtable has a track record of converting people. This is one of the things that we see that is just so surprising and delightful, right? Like, every time it happens, I'm always just like, oh, that's so wonderful. Like, it just triggers my, like, that's neat every single time. And we get emails from people who say, I became a libertarian because of you. It was because I started listening to you, because I heard your arguments, because you have a good rapport together, because you are making a data-driven, fact-driven case, because you are presenting your arguments, not just asserting that this is how the world is. I became a libertarian because of you. If you want more people to become a libertarian, donate to Reason. Support the Reason Roundtable. Listen to the Reason Roundtable. Come out to our live shows. We're going to be doing another one early next year. But like, that's up to you. You can make that happen. And the way you do it is with your donations, by pushing the thing at the little bottom of the screen here. All right, we have gone for 91 minutes. I think we are all out of words here. Maybe not Robby. Robby's got a lot more to say.
I'm about to hop on another show.
Special Hunger
30
Games.
seconds.
Special, not Hunger Games, the Read Another Book, Harry Potter episode, Harry Potter and D&D episode only after this. No, we're not actually doing that. All right, thank you all so much to the thousands of you who tuned in, to all of you who donated. Reason's Webathon will continue. Keep giving and keep tuning in. We'll see you on the Roundtable on Monday.